I ranked every held item in Pokemon from worst to best. Yep, I looked through this long list of items and found every one with an in-battle effect to judge and critique. This is only based on battle situations, mostly competitive singles and doubles, but we'll factor in-game battles too, mainly for the early portion. The ranking criteria is a little tricky since held item effectiveness usually depend on the synergy with the holder and team structure. Some items will always give value, while others may never come into play in certain matchups. Items effective in multiple situations on more Pokemon will score high. Items that are seen as win conditions carefully factored into team prep and how you play will also be ranked high. Items that have little to no beneficial effects or are very situational, only being decent on a few users, will be scored lower. Actively harmful items that can be used for disruption will be fairly placed for their utility. This is a loose baseline, and I will let the items' casual and competitive usefulness speak for themselves. Items I won't be including are in-game only ones like potions and Pokeballs. Items that only briefly existed and have been removed like the Gen 5 Gems, Berserk Gene, and Mail. Also, no signature items, Mega Stones, or Z Crystals will be included either, as they are really limited user-wise and have a wide range of effects. I already have a video covering the signature items. We'll start with the lower tier items many of you might not even know exist because of how underwhelming their effects are. In the bottom spot, number 93, we have the Destiny Knot. Destiny Knot is primarily a breeding item, but does have an in-battle effect. If the holder becomes infatuated, the Pokemon that it's in love with will also become infatuated. Not a negative effect, but one you could really only see as somewhat niche counterplay option in-game against attract spammers to show them that love hurts. Spot 92 brings us the Float Stone. This item halves the user's weight. It can potentially have a benefit lowering the damage taken from Low Kick and Grass Knot, but it could also have you take more from Heat Crash and Heavy Slam. A very limited effect item, which has double-edged sword properties, definitely earns a low spot. In spot 91, we have our first berry with the Mickle Berry. This is a pinch berry that gives the holder a 1.2 times accuracy boost to their next move. It is a one-time use and will be consumed when the user hits 25% of their max HP or less. The effect is very underwhelming and can be telegraphed when the user consumes it the turn before its actual use. Maybe if it was a stat boost it would be higher, but this has virtually no competitive or in-game application. Into the top 90, I'm going to rattle off a few similar items. Number 90 is Luminous Moss, number 89 is Absorb Bulb, 88 is the Cell Battery, and 87 is the Snowball. These all raise a stat by one stage if hit by a move of a particular type. They actually could be decent items if they weren't single-use consumables, but them being one and done while having very specific ways of proccing and only a decent effect has them not even in consideration for being used. Perhaps finding one in game and using them against an ice, water, or electric gym could be a cool tech. In spot 86 are the nearly identical Ganlon and Apricot berries. These raise their user's defense and special defense respectively by one stage when the user falls to a quarter of their max HP or less. Pinch berries granting stat boosts can be great, but a defense boost when you're in near KO range isn't the most sound strategy over an offensive or speed boost. Maybe it could help you live a weak priority attack or the last hits of a multi-strike move, but there's just so many options to consider. In spot 85 is the Enigma berry. Like the name implies, it has an interesting effect. When hit by a super effective move, this berry will be consumed and recover 1/4 of the user's max HP. Pretty much worse than a citrus berry in every way, requiring super effective hits to activate, but the burst health can be useful in-game if there's no other option. Spot 84 sees the Gen 4 introduce Grip Claw. It increases the duration of binding moves from 4 to 5 turns to always last 7 turns. This allows you to rack up residual damage without giving your opponent a chance to swap and not having to reapply it with a weak and often inaccurate attack. Binding move users generally prefer leftovers to recover when protect stalling, and this item isn't ever seen even with its decent niche effect. In spot 83, we have the Aspir berry. This berry cures the absolutely evil freeze status. It sounds useful, but freeze is the hardest status to inflict, being only caused as a secondary effect, generally a 10% chance on ice type moves. It does get some in-game points for prepping against ice attacks, but competitively, the opportunity cost of running this means you'll rarely see your held item come into play. Spot 82 is one of my favorite items in the Focus Band. This is the Focus Sash's older and less successful brother. It gives the user a 10% chance to live a hit when they normally would have fainted to an attack. Most of the time, you'll just never see this proc. It has a slight advantage over the much higher ranked Focus Sash in that it doesn't require the holder to be at full HP and can activate multiple times. While it may not be a good item, when it actually hits, it's one of the most hype feelings you can get playing Mons. Spot 81 is shared between the Jabaka and Roat berries. When the holder is hit by a physical and special attack respectively, these berries will proc and cause the attacker to lose 1/8 of their max HP. It's underwhelming for an item slot for sure, but it is pretty reliable to at least activate since you know which Pokemon will be hitting you on the physical and special sides most of the time. First quarter report. If you forgot those bottom tier items existed, congrats. You're probably not as nose deep into Pokemon all the time like me. But now we get into items that stop being terrible and go from being decent in-game items to ones you might actually see time to time in competitive formats. Spot 80 to 78 are occupied by other status healing berries. 80 is Pecha Berry, 79 Ross Berry, and 78 Cherry Berry. These cure poison, burn, and paralysis respectively. I ordered these mostly on how debilitating the status they cure is. Poison is annoying chip damage, but doesn't do anything else. Burn destroys physical attackers, so curing that is nice. And paralysis kills your speed, while also giving you a decent chance of just not attacking. So curing that is generally the most useful. Not spectacular competitive items, but absolutely useful in game to combat common status effects. In spot 77 is the item Macho Brace. In game, this is used for faster EV training, but it also has the effect of having the holder's speed. It can be used to make the user faster in Trick Room without having to hold an Iron Ball, which also removes any ground immunity the user might have. A Pokemon like Bronzong can combine this with Gyro Ball and Trick Room to actually be faster and hit harder. It can also be tricked to half the opponent's speed, but we will see items that are much preferred for tricking later. You can group all the other power items into here as well, as they share the property of having speed. Moving up to 76, here we have the Landsat Berry. This increases the user's critical hit ratio by 2 stages and activates when falling into a quarter of their max HP. I'm just gonna call that pinch health from now on, by the way. This is equivalent to the Focus Energy boost, granting regular attacks a 50% chance to crit, and high crit moves will crit guaranteed. Critical hits are always nice to have, and being able to substitute down to proc this and guarantee crits with certain moves or super luck mons at least gives this niche item consideration. Now we are officially in niche item territory as we get to the top 75 with the Starf Berry. This berry sharply raises a random stat when the holder falls to pinch health. This can be great if you're boosting a useful stat. It can be baton passed in formats where that isn't banned, combined with Stuffed Cheeks for a potential really good setup turn, or spammed with Harvest to try and accumulate a bunch of boosts. Really hard item to pull off, but it has some potential at least. Spot 74 is in a similar boat with the Ring Target. This is our first strictly negative item for the holder, as it removes any type-based immunity. The value is when you trick it onto an opposing Pokemon to rid them of any immunities. It usually isn't worth the effort and requires immaculate prediction, but you can free up another teammate by removing counterplay against them. A notable example were the Regieleki teams that try and trick a Ring Target onto the opposing ground types, so Regieleki can spam its strong electric attacks without fear. Up in spot 73 is the Lepa Berry. This berry restores up to 10 PP to any move that runs out. More of an in-game item, useful in long stretches without a Pokemon Center, but it does get a massive bump this generation with the introduction of Revival Blessing. Palmont and Rapska make good use of Lepa Berry to restore the hard-capped 1 PP for the only move that can revive a fainted ally. Having a couple Pokemon that have this as one of their go-to items in competitive brings this otherwise never seen item up to a respectable placement. Also, fun bro. In spot 72, we definitely see the zoom lens. This can be a really useful item on slow Pokemon as it raises the accuracy of their moves by 20% against targets who already moved that turn. This boosts moves with 85 or more accuracy to over 100% and substantially improves your chances of hitting for other common inaccurate moves. The main drawback of needing the target to act before you to gain any benefit from this item is what sees it on the lower side of this ranking, although its effect is decently strong otherwise. Hopping up to spot 71, we have the Person Berry. This berry will cure the holder of confusion. It's higher than the other status curing berries because of the move Outrage being the hardest hitting physical dragon type attack. This move causes the target to rampage for 2 to 3 turns and then become confused. It isn't quite as used these generations, but historically it has seen some use due to Dragon Dance sweepers not wanting to sacrifice turns of setup due to having to click Outrage and risk hitting themselves in confusion afterwards. In spot 70, we have a very basic item in Oranberry. Oranberry heals the user by 10 HP when dropping to half HP or lower. While it isn't viable at all in most competitive formats, and its in-game usage is negligible after early game, this item has been very important in the Little Cup tier. Here it has been a top item with the level cap at 5, meaning 10 HP goes a long way. If you're excluding the Little Cup tier from this list, then this item obviously drops very low, probably around the bottom. In spot 69 is another gimmicky item, the Shell Bell. After attacking, the holder will recover 1/8 of the damage and HP dealt to other Pokemon, meaning the more damage you do, the more you recover. This is an item that can technically outperform leftovers, but you have to be doing significant damage for it to be worth it. On max leveled Pokemon, it is generally just outclassed and only will recover a small percentage of HP on a strong hit. It does have a strong niche on level 1 Pokemon, however, being a part of Endeavor, Sturdy, Shell Bell sets that allow the user to bring the opponent down to 1 HP and then use Shell Bell to recover their HP to full and restore their Sturdy. Spot 68 is actually not a single item, but the most powerful items when it comes to boosting the move Fling. Fling is an attack with variable power depending on the user's held item. When using otherwise useless items like the Big Nugget or TR71 and TR43, Fling can have a base power of 130. This becomes the strongest dark type attack base power wise without setup. Tyranitar, Kieran Black, and Unburdened Pokemon can use it to gain certain KOs or just get off a really strong hit while gaining their speed boost. Just because I'm including these items that power up Fling doesn't mean I'm including every berry that powers up Natural Gift. But stay tuned to the Natural Gift berry tier list coming soon. Spot 67 is a more calculated item with Room Service. This activates and is consumed when Trick Room is set and actually lowers the holder's speed stat by 1 stage. It is a more viable doubles item as it lets middling speed Pokemon move normally without Trick Room and then become slower when needed. 2 stages would have been a lot better synergizing with more Pokemon, but 1 stage still helps enough to consider using this, and it does see a little bit of play at least. I hope I didn't miss with number 66. Here we have Blunder Policy. This is a newer item that will raise the user's speed by 2 stages if they miss a move due to accuracy. It is a one-time use item that synergizes with inconsistent moves, and Pokemon has a lot of those. This could be high-risk moves like Hypnosis or Sing, where if you hit, you put your opponent to sleep, but in the far more likely scenario you miss, your speed will double. It is a huge gimmick that can give Pokemon without the ability to boost their speed a chance to get fast, but it is really risky, and you could always just hit your attacks and never see this item proc. Its effect is still good enough to put it in over some of the other gimmick items, since you can blunder your way into a winning position sometimes. Moving up to spot 65 is the Little Cup Goat Berry Juice. It will heal the holder by 20 HP once they get to half HP or lower. The hard part of this list was deciding where to place items like this. It has been a top item in the Little Cup tier for many generations, so I can't possibly say it's a bad item, but it also has very limited use in-game in other competitive formats. It might seem a little high, but not just being another niche item and instead a very important item in a format pushes it to this lower middle ranking. In spot 64, I have the Big Root. The holder will gain 1.3 times more HP from draining moves, along with more recovery from moves like Ingrain and Aqua Ring. It's a pretty nice item for your grass types or Comfy, who usually carry a few draining moves. In competitive, other recovery or damage boosting options often outclass it, and it can be a bit of a noob trap item, but its effect is still good enough to bring it to usable status. Spot 63 is a counterplay item with the utility umbrella. The holder ignores any rain or sun effects. This includes positives like bypassing perfect accuracy moves in rain, but also will ignore boosts from other Pokemon's attacks. So specially defensive mons like Blissey or Pheasantipity can equip this to become Kyogre checks by negating its rain boosted water moves and even Thunder's accuracy. It allows them to essentially replicate the Assault Vest utility without preventing the use of status moves, allowing them to heal up. It can also work against sun boosted attacks as a bonus, but primarily has been seen to check the uber staple Kyogre. Spot 62 sees a negative effect item, the Sticky Barb. Sticky Barb will damage the holder by 1/8 of their max HP each turn they are active. It can also be passed on to an attacker making contact. This is a useful item to trick onto an opposing Pokemon to not only get rid of their beneficial item, but make their lives miserable each turn they are active. It is very hard to pull off on most Pokemon since they'll be taking damage until it's traded, and you usually want to target a specific Pokemon, so users are usually limited to Magic Guard and Klutz Pokemon who won't feel the negative effects themselves. Spot 61 is a heavy one with the Iron Ball. This is an item that can be used for good and evil. The good is halving the user's speed, which makes them faster in Trick Room while powering up Gyro Ball. It can also help activate abilities last, which is helpful in weather and terrain matchups to make sure your field effect is active. The evil is tricking it onto an opponent to half their speed while also fully grounding them, getting rid of any ground immunities they may have. This outclasses the Macho Brace heavily in almost every situation, making it the preferred item. I would say that wraps up the lower middle tier. If you played some Pokemons or dabble in competitive, you will likely see a lot of these next items as they are not at a place in the realm of usefulness. Spot 60 is a straightforward item with Wise classes. This will boost the user's special attacks by 10%. It's a pretty mild boost, but is sometimes a preferred item due to the lack of downsides. Items like the Choice Specs and Life Orb are a lot more powerful and useful, but they do have certain drawbacks, and the Wise Glasses boost may secure the same 2 and 3 hit KOs without any other sacrifices. In spot 59 are the Wise Glasses brother, the Muscle Band. This is an item that boosts the holder's physical attacks by 10%. It has the same pros and cons of the Wise Glasses, where it only provides a slight boost. Pokemon who depend on their coverage and don't want to lose HP with Life Orb can find a use for this. Physical attacks are generally more spammable and have higher base power, which gives this item more overall utility. In spot 58, I have the last item primarily used for disruption in the Lagging Tail. You can put the full incense in here too, since it has the same effect. These items will make the holder move last in their priority bracket. So this isn't even just having their speed, but making them move last unless using a priority move or another Pokemon is using a negative priority move. It is essentially like giving them the ability Stall and can ruin offensive Pokemon that depend on moving fast to be successful. This is typically seen on prankster Pokemon who don't really feel the effects, meaning you'll have no problem crippling your opponent while stealing a potentially beneficial item for yourself. Up in spot 57 and spot 56, I have the Moringa and Key Berries. I thought these warranted their own placements since they are good enough berries to actually see competitive use. The Moringa Berry will raise the user's special attack stat by 1 stage when hit with a special attack, and the Key Berry will do the same thing but for defense when hit with a physical attack. The ability to proc right away is what makes them useful, as it can help various Pokemon shore up their lower defense stat without needing to dedicate excessive EVs or a move slot to them. They each have a handful of users depending on the format, but I think the Key Berry just has overall more usefulness and synergy, especially considering Calm Mind and Quiver Dance Pokemon who are vulnerable on the physical side. Spot 55 sees a new item in the Ability Shield. This prevents the holder's ability from being changed, suppressed, or ignored by any effect. This includes not being affected by Mold Breaker, which help Pokemon with Levitate, Magic Bounce, and Unaware still perform their roles. It even allows abilities to function while neutralizing gas is active, so make sure you have it equipped on your Regigigas and Slaking, so you aren't missing out on your abilities when Weezing pulls up. Spot 54 is the Batea Berry. This is a pinch berry that raises the user's special attack by 1 stage when in range. It's a pretty good effect and can be nice on a few users, especially Harvests and Unburdened special attackers. With more items introduced, the popularity has went down, as proccing it can be difficult. It is a bit more niche than its counterparts we'll see in a bit, but can still be a serviceable option to support wall breaking and late game sweeps. Spot 53 is a straight RNG item, Grape Powder. You can include Laxton Sense here, as it shares the same effect. These reduce the accuracy of attacks against the holder by 10% of their original accuracy. It gives you a shot to dodge 100% accurate moves and further punish moves that can miss, possibly making your opponent feel like they're getting super lucky and put them on tilt, raising your chances of winning drastically. Luck-based items like this are banned in Smogon tiers, but in doubles, it's often combined with evasion boosting abilities to stack the odds of dodging attacks further in your favor, making it an actual viable strategy. Above those, in spot 52, we have the Metronome. No, not the move, the item. Metronome is one of the cooler items introduced, granting it 20% damage boost on attacking moves used consecutively and stacking each use. This item can help your attacks reach 2 times their initial power if you use them 6 or more times in a row. Your moves start getting a bigger damage output than Life Orb after 3 uses, and choice items after 4, while having the negative drawback of forcing the user to spam the same move to gain benefit. This is handy on Pokemon like Kyurem, Mamoswine, Togekiss, Celesteela, and some others that have spammable moves with no immunities like ice and flying attacks. You can break through walls that might try to recover spam, thinking they're in free hit KO territory, and all of a sudden start taking more and more damage to the point where they have to recover every turn or swap out. It's a high reward item in certain matchups if you can get it going. The Muscle Pass would be checks. Right outside the top 50, in spot 51, I have the Quick Claw. This is a fun RNG item that gives the holder a 20% chance to move first in the priority bracket each turn, regardless of speed. It can definitely be clutch on slower Pokemon to get the jump on unsuspecting Quick and Frail Mons. Galarian Slowbro famously used this in combination with his signature Quick Draw ability. These effects stacked and gave it a really good chance of moving first without having to invest in speed at all. It can be used on any slow offensive mon, or something like Ditto, who changes a speed tie to a favorable shot at moving first without locking itself into a Choice Scarf. Unfortunately, it has been banned in Smogon play, being an RNG based item, but its influence has been seen and it deserves this decent ranking. Pretty much halftime here, buds. Up in the top 50, we're arriving to items you wouldn't be shocked to see. Some still niche, but good enough in the right scenarios to actually influence games. This is a time where I want you to leave a comment on what your favorite item is and why. Starting this portion of the list with the normal gem. This is the only gem still available outside of their debut in Generation 5. It boosts the power of a normal type attack by 30% and then is consumed. On paper, it may not look quite as good as some of the previous ones, but it finds use as more of a setup option. Unburdened users such as Sneasler and Hitmonlee can reliably activate their speed boost by using priority fake out, which will be boosted and consume their item. It has been used on explosion users like Landorus, Azelf, and Metagross to allow them to bring the boom a little harder without depleting their own HP with Life Orb prior. Other Pokemon like Ambipom can use it on their fake out to get rid of their item and take advantage of a more powerful acrobatics. Spot 49 sees the Batea Berry's physical counterpart in the Lychee Berry. This is a pinch berry that raises a user's attack by 1 stage when in range. It doesn't have any real mechanical benefits over the Patea berry, but has more users that gel with its effects. This includes being a consumable, which activates unburdened sweepers, who tend to lean towards the physical side. Same goes with sturdy users, who can more easily activate its effect and tend to be physically based. It also juices up the move acrobatics, which is physical, and works well with other abilities like Harvest and Kudchu. In spot 48, we have another snack with the Salac berry. This pinch berry will raise the user's speed by 1 stage when they fall into range. It can be manually activated by using Substitute or Endure, and also gels well with Sturdy. The speed boost allows sweeping potential, primarily in singles tiers, and can synergize well with moves like Flail and Reversal. In spot 47, we have our first herb. It's the Mirror Herb. When an opposing Pokemon raises a stat, the holder will copy the increase and consume the item. This is an item with potentially game-winning rewards if you suspect your opponent is going for a big boost like Shell Smash. You can swap in on it and copy the boost for yourself. On the other hand, if your opponent has no setup, this item can just be useless. I feel like it would have been a bit better if introduced earlier when mixed attackers were run more often, since swapping in a Porygon 2 on a Swords Dance will burn your item and grant you no benefit. You have to pick your spot pretty accurately with the Mirror Herb, and I feel like it is a better item in formats with team versus team prep like Draft League or my Frog Only tournament I hosted where Mirror Herb was a meta item. In spot 46 is another speed boosting item, the Adrenaline Orb. This is an interesting one that activates when the holder is intimidated. It will raise the user's speed stat by 1 stage and get consumed. It is very much a doubles leaning item, since Intimidate is very common there, giving the Adrenaline Orb a lot more chances to activate. This is often paired with the abilities Competitive and Defiant. These sharply raise the user's special attack and attack stats respectively if any of their stats are lowered by an opposing Pokemon. When up against an Intimidate user, this can instantly give physical attackers a Dragon Dance-esque setup while giving special attackers a +2 special attack and +1 speed to be immediately threatening. It's not limited to these users, it can be a good way to gain outspeeds on Pokemon that don't have other means to boost speed, since you have very good odds of running into an opposing Intimidate to activate your orb. Spot 45 is the luck boosting Scope Lens. This and his brother the Razor Claw share the effect of increasing the holder's critical hit ratio by 1 stage. On most Pokemon, this will change their moves from a 1 in 24 chance to crit to a 1 in 8, but when combined with the right Pokemon, you receive great odds. Mons running a move with high critical hit chance will receive a 50% chance to crit when using those attacks. If you combine Super Luck with a high crit move and Scope Lens, you are guaranteed to crit. Focus Energy users can also equip Scope Lens to guarantee crits. This is seen primarily on Sniper Kingdra, who can spam Draco Meteor, critting each time, and not caring about the special attack drops that the crits bypass. In spot 44, we have the Shed Shell. This item prevents the user from being trapped. It may have fewer users than some of the previous items mentioned, but this is mainly due to the trapping abilities Arena Trap and Shadow Tag usually being banned in singles. It still sees use on some steel types like Skarmory, who can be trapped by Magnezone's Magnet Pull, as well as Toxapex, who can fall victim to Heatran's Magnastorm and Taunt Wursets. It's a legit item that also unfortunately helps stalling Hazard Stack teams with Regenerator pivots, but I digress. In spot 43, we have the slightly above average Expert Belt. This boosts the power of the user's super effective attacks by 20%. It's a good item on Pokemon who rely on their coverage and don't want to be restricted by choice items or take damage from Life Orb. You can even use it to bluff choice items on super effective hits, since the damage rolls will usually overlap. It isn't higher due to the boost not being that crazy, maybe gaining a few extra 2-hit KOs on bulky Pokemon, and giving you enough damage to finish off weakened mons with priority. But since you have to hit super effectively for it to come into play, there's a chance it might not contribute much or even matter in a matchup. Spot 42 is our top RNG based item on the list with the King's Rock. The Razor Claw shares this spot, as both share the effect of granting the holder's attacks without a chance to flinch a 10% chance to flinch. This is now banned in singles, but when it was allowed, it made Pokemon using multi-strike attacks extremely threatening and difficult to handle. Shell Smash Cloyster not only output massive damage, but its Skill Link Icicle Spears and Rock Blast would have a 41% chance to flinch after grabbing the guaranteed 5 hits. Other fast Pokemon like Cinccino and Ambipom could also run it and try to flinch down slower opponents with their great coverage. It did depend on luck, but when your Cloyster has a 41% chance of just winning the game on the spot by flinching your opponent's only Mon who doesn't get one shot by its +2 stab, you believe in the rock and roll with it. In spot 41, I have a new item with the Punching Glove. This increases the power of the holder's punch-based attacks by 10%. To go with this, they won't make contact. It means they're protected from all those nasty contact effects like Rocky Helmet, Flame Body, and more, while giving you a slight power boost to your punching moves. It's a great choice for Pokemon who like to run a couple punching attacks like Melmetal, Annihilate, and Rapid Strike your Shifu. You don't have to worry about that bulky resist coming in and taking half your HP with the combination of Rocky Helmet, Rough Skin, and Iron Barbs. Into the top 40, we have the predecessor of the Punching Glove with the Protective Pads. This protects the holder from adverse contact effects. Essentially, they also won't be affected by things like Rough Skin and Static. The moves still make contact though, which is nice for the Urshifus since Unseen Fist only works with contact moves. It's a great choice on strong physical attackers spamming contact moves and pivoting Pokemon. With contact punishing Pokemon being run regularly in singles, this mitigates any chip or status fishing for the Protective Pads holders. Spot 39 sees the Wide Lens. This is a fairly simple item, increasing the accuracy of the holder's moves by 10% of the original. It's a hustle Pokemon's best friend, since their physical attacks suffer an accuracy reduction in exchange for a great power boost. It makes their attacks a lot more reliable. Other users like Mousehold, Hitmontop, and Serena appreciate it on moves like Population Bomb and Triple Axle, which hit multiple times with multiple 90% accuracy checks. Thanks to Wide Lens, each 90% accuracy check turns into 99% per check, which makes it extremely likely you land the full move. It severely outranks the Zoom Lens due to always being in effect to benefit the user instead of depending on moving after the target. Offensive Pokemon who need to land their attacks have a lot more use for this type of effect than slower Pokemon who can afford to take hits for a greater boost. In spot 38, I'm grouping all the pinch HP restoring berries. This includes the Guave, Mego, Ayapapa, and Figgy berries. These restore the holder's HP by 33% of their max when falling into range. This is the biggest burst HP boost you can get from a berry when considering you are playing level 50 or 100. It is useful on Pokemons who get to that pinch range often and recover more than a citrus would. The main downside is this berry is a risk to use, as you can easily get dropped right out of range and have this berry do nothing. It would have been a lot higher if it functioned how it did when buffed in Generation 7, as it used to restore 50% of the user's max HP. It was nerfed the next generation, but can still be a great option, especially on Gluttony users as a strictly better citrus berry. We jump ahead to spot 37 with the Custap berry. This is another pinch berry with the great effect of allowing the holder to move first in the priority bracket the turn it activates. The cool thing about the Custap berry is that it lays low until it's used. It won't be consumed immediately when put into range like the Mickle berry. Once in range, it will activate at the start of the next turn, allowing you to get the jump on your opponent. This is great on sturdy lead Pokemon who are far more likely to get it off, allowing them to set up hazards and get off a strong attack before going down. Other slow, bulky Pokemon with a knack for surviving on low HP enjoy this item. Definitely a bit more of a singles item effectiveness wise, but still worthy of this respectable rating. In spot 36, I have a more Pokemon specific item with the Terrain Extender. This extends the duration of terrains from 5 to 8 turns. For teams based around terrain, having a few extra turns can be absolutely huge. Outside of Misty Terrain, each terrain boosts the power of the respective types by 30% and grants additional positive effects. Not having to reset it as often, or even at all in some doubles matches that tend to move quicker, can be a game changer. And while it is most common on Pokemon who set terrain upon swap-in, it can also be useful on manual terrain setters such as Prankster Thundurus to get the most bang for your buck running a move slot for it. That's where I'm going to cut part 1. We went from borderline useless items to getting into ones you'll see pretty regularly. The remaining items aren't just niche or situational, they actively shape competitive play and start defining the Pokemon that use them. We'll be covering all those in part 2, but before that, I want you to drop your predictions for the top 10 in the comments and let me know what you think I got right or completely missed on. If part 2 is already out, it should be on the screen right now. If not, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it when it drops. I'll see you there, buds.